there's always something that we have in common. And it is easy to either demonize someone or to simply just other them and to think, well, they're not like me, so it's not worthwhile. We're not, but we always have something in common with other people that we can relate to them about. And that in order to have a civil society, we've all just got to find that, and we've got to deal with it.
Hello and welcome to another edition of The Art of Public Speaking. I'm Noel T. Manning II, and as we are going to continue to explore, public speaking is about connection, it's about intention, and it's about understanding how communication actually works. One of the foundational ideas that we will continue to go to again and again and again is rhetoric. It's an exploration of the thoughtful choices that we make when we speak, when we listen, and also when we respond to each other. And at the heart of that conversation are Aristotle's core appeals: ethos, pathos, and logos. They're ideas that continue to shape how we communicate today, almost 2,500 years later. Dr. Cheryl Duffus, she has been teaching rhetoric in some form or fashion since 1999, and she helps students to think deeply about how these ideas function beyond just theory. So today, we're going to explore why rhetoric still matters and how it applies to effective communication. This dialogue isn't about memorizing terms. It's really about seeing communication more clearly and understanding how your voice fits into it all. Dr. Duffus, thanks for taking the time to spend with us right here in public speaking. We call this series The Art of Public Speaking, and we like to have guests on here to talk about various aspects of tools and tips that I think our students and really anyone who's interested can utilize. So thanks for being with us.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm happy to be here.
So Dr. Duffus, when I was in college, one of the classes that I was scared of, and I was a mass communications major, and one of the requirements for upper level for the majors was rhetoric and grammar.
Yeah.
And I was scared to death of that class because I heard horror stories, and I heard of people who that was a class that ended up, people would take it and fail, and then they would transition to another major, and so it scared me to death. And but I remember actually talking to the chair of my department, and his name was Dr. Bill Stowe, and he taught both English and Mass Comm. He was one of these professors that would go between both. And he really helped calm me down and help ease my fears. And I had fortunately had him a few times as well, so I knew what to expect. But he eased my fears. But I know that there are some students who hear the word rhetoric and they immediately are intimidated, like I was. And so when you hear the word rhetoric, I mean, how do you explain it to students who think it's fancy language, manipulation, or something to be afraid of? So how do you break down that barrier for students?
Usually I get them to talk about exactly what you're saying. So what do you your conceptions, what do you think rhetoric is? And some students may have never heard the word. It depends what their background is before they come here or what classes they've had before, because we teach rhetoric actually in first year writing as well as in the rhetoric class that I also teach. That's a more upper level, just focused on public speaking or oration. But, what do you think it is? Is it something that sounds like you're saying? Oftentimes it's gotten kind of a bad rep because it seems, it's how you manipulate people. And we have so many good examples of people who do use their powers of speech and argument in order to, manipulate things. So just kind of breaking it down. And I think what has been really helpful for me in teaching this rhetoric class is looking at, this is a term that comes from the ancient Greeks and the Romans. So this has been around for 2,500 years. What were they originally thinking? What would it be its purpose? And really its purpose is to make us into is to help us think more clearly. It's not just to help us in our own communication, so whether it's spoken or written, but also, well, what do we do with the information that we're given? How do we evaluate what people are telling us and if we agree or we don't agree? Because for them, rhetoric was about, okay, we're in this community, whether it's just the city of Athens or maybe the Roman Empire, and we have these problems and stuff comes up and we got to figure out what's going to be best for our community. And I think that's kind of a life thing that happens for all of us, whether it's your family, your church, your school, your workplace, your town, whatever. Stuff happens and you've got to have debate and you've got to think about, well, what's the most reasonable solution for us to take? What's the most reasonable path forward with the greatest good for all? And to me, I try to get kind of more at the heart of, well, what was the original intent and how has it kind of morphed over time?
When I think about what you said, 2,500 years ago,
Yeah.
we were talking about ethos, pathos, logos,
Yeah.
but yet it's still relevant, and it's
Yes.
still something that was rooted in a particular time and place and people
Hmm.
and community. But why do you think that here we are, two, 2,500 years later,
Yeah.
and it's still something that's relevant? How has it
Hmm.
sustained its relevancy?
I think it's because we still function in a lot of the same ways. I mean, there's a lot that's different. I mean, I think there's a lot we cannot relate to a person's point of view from 2000 years ago. We don't know what it was like to live then. But I think in terms of what human beings respond to and what we find appealing and what we find persuasive has really not changed a whole lot. We still are very easily swayed by emotions, the pathos stuff. We don't like to think that we are. We like to think we're these, Mr. Spock rational people.
I thought she was making pretty good sense.
That may seem so, yeoman, but her argument is invalid. An appeal to emotion is a type of argument which attempts to arouse the emotions of its audience in order to gain acceptance of its conclusion. Emotion is not always out of place in logical thinking. However, because strong emotions can subvert rational thought, playing upon emotions in an argument is often fallacious. Appeals to emotion are always fallacious when intended to influence our beliefs.
We're not 100% rational like that. Oftentimes emotions really do sway us. And I think it's good to be very aware of it so that we can tell, okay, when is an emotion being appealed to in a positive way? And there are positive emotions that are very beneficial to us, like empathy, compassion, wanting to take care of our communities and so forth. Those kinds of things are better angels, I guess you would say. But being constantly aware of, well, what are my weak points? What are my emotions that sometimes make me a little irrational? So those things still are very much a part of us, but we do have that logic. I'm kind of making fun of us, but we are very persuaded by things that sound thought out, like that there is a plan. Okay, there's a problem. What is the solution? Is it a solution that's realistic and doable? Is it a solution that's been informed by either the person's expertise or perhaps they have done their work? They've actually either thought about it or they have worked through. We have a lot of stuff we do in rhetoric where we work out like the logical conclusions of taking a certain stand. Has this person considered other people's points of view in a respectful way and not in a way in which we kind of dismiss the other person's point of view or we talk down to them or whatever? Oftentimes we do give a lot of credence to statistics and facts and so forth. We have a lot more of those at our fingertips because of our modern society and libraries and technology and all of that. And with the ancient Greeks and Romans, that was not the end-all be-all of an argument. It was not statistics and facts. It was more like, well, if it's a fact, it's hopefully something we all agree upon. It's what do you do with it? What does it
Yeah,
mean? How are we supposed to interpret it? It's like I get my student evaluations at the end of the semester and there's all this data in it. Well, I'm not going to argue over the data, but what does it mean? How do I
right,
interpret it?
right.
How does this have meaning in my life? So I think in some ways, this ability to interpret information that someone's telling us or that we're reading is even more important now because the information we have, it's a fire hose. I mean, it is
Right.
overwhelming. That is a drawback of everything being digitized, the internet, now we've got AI, there's no filter anymore. And it's good to have a filter and to think about, okay, if I'm the audience, I'm either listening to something or I'm reading something, what do I want out of this? How am I analyzing this information? Is this information even appropriate for me? This comes up
Right.
a lot, for example, with students dealing with the library. And the library doesn't know whether it's your first semester of college or if you have a PhD. It just throws all this information at you, and it's easy to get overwhelmed by information these days. It's easy to get overwhelmed by voices and people who sound smart. They sound credible, but are they really? And increasingly now we're getting into a situation where we have to ask ourselves, is it even real?
Right. Well, that's that kind of follow up to that credibility. There are some who believe that credibility comes from a title a person may carry or the authority that someone may have. But how do you actually build credibility through conversations, through classrooms, and through workspaces with that in mind?
I think it is easy to say, oh, someone's got this title or whatever. And there's nothing wrong. I mean, most people work for their titles. They work to achieve that status in life. But I think you can't just take it on a person's reputation, or you can't just take it on a person's title. They have to back it up. And I think that, I don't know, with rhetoric, if you are able to learn some of these strategies, that can be a way of, that's your ethos. Your credibility is that you can build that without a title, because you can learn these strategies that work for each person about, well, how do I sound like a credible person who should be listened to, even though maybe I'm only 18 or 19? And maybe people might disregard me because of my youth. But how can I establish that credibility and gain the audience's trust and attention? And it's a lot more than just title. And there are many times where we've all gone to hear someone who they had this great reputation and we had these expectations, and then we're like, it felt superficial.
Yeah.
It didn't feel, I don't know, like they put anything into it.
Yeah. Ethos is something that can be damaged pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And you kind of addressed that. So what are some common ways that I think, or what are some common ways that people may lose trust without realizing they're losing trust?
One thing that was mentioned just in my class on Monday, and that was the example of being superficial. Feeling like that person just kind of showed up to wing it. There wasn't depth to what they were saying, and that, I came, and the example, the context was being in church and listening to a sermon. And I think there might have been a guest pastor or a guest person delivering the message. And they just felt like, hey, here I am. I want to learn something that's going to help me in my faith or whatever. I wanted to learn more, either about the scripture that was being read or whatnot. And I felt like this person was just skimming the surface. They didn't really do the work that I was expecting them to put into this. And I'm really it was, it's not going to ruin your life, but it made me grumpy. I felt kind of shortchanged. So I think it's, thinking about, well, who is this audience and what are they expecting out of me? And realizing you have to fulfill that compact with the audience. You may not, being aware of your audience is a huge thing. So I think that is a good example of how you can lose your audience's trust. I think anytime you in any way look down on an audience, or you think you know more than them, or you're in some way better than them, that is the kiss of death. It's a bad idea, and it can create huge problems in our society. Sometimes have been created because people felt like they weren't heard. They felt like they were dismissed. They felt like they were looked down upon, and it incites them to go in directions that maybe aren't in the best direction for our society to go in. So I think that it's important to know your audience and to anticipate, well, okay, here's this top subject that I'm talking about. How do I think my audience feels about this? Do they have a diverse range of opinions? What can I rely upon? And what can I play to? What can I kind of take for granted? And so it's good to put that time in ahead of time, really brainstorming and thinking about your audience and how you're going to appeal to them and thinking about common ground. How do I build that relationship of trust where the audience feels like I'm there with them and I'm not there to talk down at them, because I think in American society in particular, we don't like that feeling of the expert making us feel silly or,
Right.
like we don't know things or, that we can't be talked to like regular people. So it's always, and that goes that if that kind of has a ripple effect. If you're preparing a public talk, from the very beginning, you have to think of a way, how am I going to appeal to the audience and show them that I know them and I'm here to, I can build common ground with them, and that, it could be through anything, humor, anecdotes, stories, anything personal can really kind of build that trust with an audience so they feel like
I think there are sometimes challenges when the audience is so diverse. How do you make that message universal enough? I am a lover of cinema and am involved in film critique and some organizations voting for year-end awards. And so I'm always watching the award shows. So I'm a Critics' Choice voting member. So when the Critics' Choice Awards came out, I was watching the speeches. So I'm always interested in, okay, those who end up winning the awards, what are those speeches that they're going to give? Some of them are very well prepared. Some of them get up and say, I didn't prepare anything because I didn't think I was going to win. And so I'm like, why would you not at least prepare something? And when they are speaking upon accepting the awards, the audience is so vast. I mean, they're speaking to those who voted for them. They are speaking to those who are in actually attendance in the ballroom or the arena or wherever they are, but they're also speaking to a television audience that may have never seen or heard their TV show or their film before. And so from a standpoint of when you're trying to explain to students about preparing a speech that may speak to that diverse audience, what are some of the tips that you give for that kind of thing?
I think then if you can't rely upon your audience, really knowing your audience and their opinions and backgrounds and all of that, if it is just so diverse that that's just overwhelming and it's not going to help you, I would say think of your topic. This is where you really have to spend time ahead of time preparing your topic and really brainstorming. Okay, what are the range of opinions about this topic? What are the range of experiences with this topic? Is this something that most people find, okay, have they heard of it? Is it something that most people think is important? Is it something that most people think is, I don't know, kind of boring? And then just kind of go from there with the topic, kind of broad assumptions. I think it's better if you are thinking of an audience that has a diverse range of opinions. It's better not to come out kind of with a very strong political, religious, anything point of view. Maybe one that is a little more, I don't know, I guess ecumenical or big tent. There are things that we can maybe perhaps all agree upon. But I think it's, thinking about that topic. And is it a topic that people are aware of right now? And the Greeks called this Kairos, and that's urgency. Is this something that's on people's radar, or is it something that, I have to make them aware of? And so what's the best way to do it? If it's something that people think is boring, can I get them into it in a kind of humorous way? How do I create that urgency for them so that I can get them to see that this is something important that I have to talk about? So as I said, I think that's the other route that you can go on. Yeah.
As I spend some time with students and asking them to tell me who appeals to them as a public speaker, I'll first kind of ask that question. Okay, who is it?
Yeah.
Who do you think is a strong public speaker? And then I ask the why. And when you get to the why and you start drilling down, you start thinking about things. For some, they're like, well, it speaks to my emotions. It appeals to me emotionally.
Yeah.
But then there are others that say, no, I look at emotions as being manipulative. And so when they're trying to get me to feel a certain way, I feel like I'm being manipulated. So how do you help students, and how do you help people to understand the difference
Mhm.
between connecting emotionally, but
Mhm.
then playing on emotions, which are,
Yeah.
are different
Yeah.
things?
Yeah. I think that's a good point because we do get very aware of being manipulated. I think you have to have balance when you're preparing something, is that you can't just rely upon emotion or telling personal stories or telling anecdotes. You have to have some meat in there. You do have to, and that's again where preparing can really help you. So what are my concrete logical reasons
Right.
that are behind what it is that I'm telling you? I've got to have actual information, because it seems like oftentimes the emotions, it's kind of in some ways it's a good hook. It's how to get people awake and aware and paying attention, whether it's through, I don't know, a humorous joke or a personal story or something that touches people's heartstrings. That's a good way to get people paying attention, but that can't be all that you do,
Right.
because people then will feel like, well, yeah, maybe I've been told a sad story, but what do I do with it? But you do have to have the meat. And that's where, again, spending that time preparing and really thinking about, okay, what is my argument? What is my point? And how am I going to support it? Because whether you're thinking of it as an argument or not, it's useful to think that way, because every speech should have a point. And one thing is, thinking about the end point. What do I want my audience to be convinced of by the time they leave here? And what are the three things that are they're going to take away? Most people are only going to take away 2 to 3 things, because we just
Yeah.
can't remember what we're verbally told. So what are the 2 to 3 things I want them to take away from this? And it's going to be more than just the feelings. The feelings are kind of it makes you a real person that they want to listen to, but it's not the whole point. And so
Right.
what are you trying to get them to do? What are you trying to get them to see? How are you trying to get them to open or change their minds, or to maybe you just want them to consider changing their minds? And then what are the 2 or 3 things, I don't know, the concrete logic, evidence, whatever you want to call it, reasons that are going to help them get there?
When you look at the appeals of Ethos, Pathos, Logos, and there are some speakers who will lean into one more than another. I think earlier you'd mentioned balance, and I think balance
Mhm.
and truly strong communication finds ways to utilize each of
Yeah.
those. Are there any examples that you can think of where maybe one of those was missing from a particular
Mhm.
speech, or a speaker that just found a way to miss the mark because it was missing something?
Yeah. Um, Not one that I have personally heard, but this is an example from a podcast called Throughline. And what it does, I really like it because they a topic that's I don't know, important today or controversial or whatnot, and they look at the history behind it. And one of their episodes within the last year or two was on vaccines. And as we know, we're in a moment where there's a tremendous amount of debate around vaccines. There are a lot of people who think that they're skeptical of them. They think there might be harms associated with them, et cetera. So the program was like, okay, let's look back. Where did this come from? It didn't just happen in 2020 with the COVID vaccine.
Right.
This has a long history. They went back to polio, the polio epidemic and the vaccine for that, but it was really that measles, mumps, rubella, I think, vaccine in the late 60s, early 70s that there was first parent pushback. There were questions, there were concerns, etc. And in the story that they told, and a doctor was telling this story, they were interviewing the doctor, and he said that they convened this meeting, like a town hall of concerned parents, and they had doctors come talk to them about the vaccine. And the doctors leaned so heavily into logos, they made these people very angry. They came
Wow.
in, and instead of listening to the parents and treating them with respect and relating to their emotions,
Yeah.
they're legitimate concerns. All parents are concerned about the well-being of their children. And instead of being aware of that common kind of emotional bond, they just came in and just were like, what's wrong with you people? The science says that vaccines are
Wow.
good. Do you
Yeah.
want your kids to die of measles? Blah, blah. They just really leaned in. And those are negative emotions, manipulation,
Mhm.
fear. People are going to die. Worst case scenario. That's all the negative stuff. But they just and then they piled on all the science and all that stuff. And this is what fueled the movement against vaccines.
Wow. Wow.
because parents did not feel listened to, they did not feel heard, they did not feel respected. And it was a huge, and the doctor they were interviewing on this program admitted this was an enormous mistake. These doctors should not have done this. They leaned way too heavy into logos. They came in as these scientific authorities and they talked down to these people, and it backfired horribly. This is not how it should have happened. And you really just shouldn't treat people like that anyway.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I thought that was a very powerful example. And I thought it was also hearing another doctor say that, to me, gave that person a lot of credit because he was able to see the mistakes that his colleagues had made in the past and to kind of own up to them and to say, and this is why we have so much work to do now.
Yeah. And the podcast name again?
It's called Throughline.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's also on the radio, but it's a podcast as well. And they're good about providing different points of view. So that's not just one point of view on a controversial topic.
Well, you've talked about audience awareness and listening. I think active listening is such a key part. And I try to share that within public speaking. How do you feel that active listening fits into the heart of rhetoric and effective communication from your standpoint?
Yeah, it's some of it is you do need to kind of read the room.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have a feeling of, okay, an awareness, kind of an intuition. Sometimes people don't have a knack for reading the room.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those doctors in that situation probably had
right.
no feeling for reading the room because I'm sure that you could read it on the parents' faces. But anyway, sometimes it's reading the room. But again, it's just spending that time thinking about, okay, what a reasonable person, if they're coming to listen to a talk on this subject or they're listening to me give a speech or whatever, what are some reasonable things that people are thinking and feeling right now? Also, audiences' expectations with the amount of time you're going to speak and being respectful of that. For example, if you're giving a graduation speech, people are there to see their kids graduate or their family members graduate. They are not really there to hear you talk. They would appreciate an engaging, heartwarming, feeling, but 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes. You really don't want to belabor it. And you want to be mindful that you're here to celebrate the graduates. You're here to commend their families for their support. There's common sense things that you really do need to think about in terms of your audience and to be respectful of them in terms of, time. What is the level of information that they want to hear? If you are a really big expert in something, you have to have the knack of being able to talk to it to fellow experts versus people who are more of a general audience. And to do that in a way where you are not over-explaining or talking down to them. So, I think that some people they're really good at this. They might be experts in whatever their field is, but they're also good at taking those concepts and making them interesting and relevant to a general audience who doesn't need to know everything that someone with a medical degree or a PhD or someone who's been an accountant for 25 years needs to know.
Right.
You need to think about what is this audience, perhaps it's a general audience, what is it that they're here for? What is it that I'm doing for them? They're not here just to listen to me talk.
Yeah, audience awareness does go beyond just being on stage or speaking in front of a camera or a microphone, more than just formal speeches. Emails, being aware of your audience, social media, even tough conversations. I think all those things, if you take the time to be aware of that audience and how you need to address them, there's a shift sometimes in how you say something or what you say.
Mm-hmm.
So rhetoric in everyday life, let's talk a little bit about where do you personally see rhetoric at work most often in everyday life, where students maybe not even expecting it.
Yeah. We don't think about it, but there's the lovely rhetorical triangle, which everything comes down to that. The basic format of it is there's you, the communicator, however way you're communicating. There's the message, and then there's the audience. And all day long, we're in all these different rhetorical triangles. And when it's presented in class, we're thinking about it more formally in terms of a prepared assignment of some kind, or a formal speech you're giving, like let's say at a award ceremony for someone or a retirement dinner or graduation or whatever. You're thinking about that formal situation. But like you're saying, just writing an email, what does this person need to know? How do I address this person? Is this someone that I know really well? In which case I can say, hey, what's up? Or maybe I don't even need that. Maybe I just
Yeah.
need, our meeting's canceled. Sorry.
Yeah.
If I know him really well, maybe I can speak less formally, not even use good grammar or whatnot. If it's someone I don't know well, maybe I need to, be more formal in my address, etc. And what is it that I want to tell them? I think that's why we see a lot of reliance on the AI scripted emails, because sometimes people feel very awkward and they are not quite sure I've never written an email to a professor before. What do I do?
Right.
Right. I don't know how to do this. It's just kind of weird. But I think it's email, it's on social media, it's everywhere that we go. It's a phone call, it's a text, it's a conversation that you might have with, I don't know, maybe it's you're in the line in the dining hall and you want to talk to, who am I, is it talking to a stranger behind me or another person? We're constantly shifting and adjusting how we talk, how we communicate, depending upon the person we're talking to or the way that we're talking to them, whatever that medium is. So I don't know, I think it kind of rules our lives.
Yeah.
And we all know people who have no filter and none whatsoever. And it's stressful.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in this current day and age where we are now, where do you think the greatest benefits are we have for being able to communicate with others? What are the greatest benefits? Then I'll come and ask you to talk about maybe what are the greatest roadblocks, and maybe there's a little bit of both. And what your answer is?
One of the benefits is that we do have the ability, because of technology, to revise a communication because we don't have to do it verbally. We have so many other choices. And sometimes, I don't know, sometimes we can take time and think about what is the most diplomatic way to put this.
Right.
Because I don't have to think of it off the cuff. Some of us, we just really need some time to process the best way to say something. And we don't want to come across as too blunt or too casual or not thinking about it. And I think that that's a benefit of email and texting, is that we do have the ability to fire off something we regret forever. That's the downside. We've all sent that text you cannot take back, or that post that you cannot take back, and it's there forever.
Right.
Things in print haunt us more than what we say verbally. So I think it's the benefit. You can hold back. You don't have to send that message right away. You can think about the best way to put it. You can even sleep on it, and think about, do I really want to send this the next day? I don't, and sometimes verbally we'll speak in anger without thinking. But the downside is, if it's a post, we might regret it and it's out there forever. I mean, I worry about a lot of younger people. They've got so much out there, and hopefully people are careful about what they post. I think a lot of people, you do see, as people get older and they get jobs, you do see how they censor themselves in their social media world, because they're aware of the fact that maybe I'm not talking about my job, but if I say something controversial, it could blow back on me at work. And we've seen lots of terrible examples of that. But whether I like it or not, people can find out who I am and the communities I belong to. So I think that's drawback, I guess, of the world that we're living in, is that we've lost so much of our privacy.
Right. Well, as we're kind of wrapping up, if there's one final takeaway that you could share, that maybe would be a mindset shift about rhetoric and maybe public speaking. What do you hope that students could carry away with them, if there's one final thing you could share?
That these are tools that are intended to help us, I guess, respond rather than react, to piggyback off of what you are saying. They are tools to get us to stop and think, and to think about, why do I believe this? Why do I feel this? And then how am I going to get my message best across? I think one thing important I've learned from looking at the ancient rhetorics is that in the ancient Greece and Rome, our opinions weren't our entire identity. And just because someone, we we'll kind of pigeonhole people or put them in a box. Oh, they have this opinion about this issue, and I don't share that opinion, so I don't like them. Or I can't be friends with them, or we can't relate, or we have nothing else in common. But admittedly, ancient Athens was a much more homogenous culture, but they didn't see it that way. They thought that we were supposed to have different opinions because the way that you became a more productive society was through exchanging those opinions and debating them and figuring out what was the best solution for a community, and that it was important for people to have different opinions. And I think to me, that's that's one of the things I've learned the most as a professor, is that my students are very diverse people, and it's important to me to listen and to be respectful and to not treat them like one-dimensional people, because it's just, I don't know, it doesn't create a great community, I guess. And there is a lot of that. It's just easy to see someone, I don't know, a celebrity post something on social media, and we dismiss that person for one opinion or maybe one bad day or something like that. And hopefully we can see people as more well-rounded, and that we're diverse, and we're a grab bag of opinions and just because they might even contradict, that maybe we have some conservative opinions, to use politics. Maybe we also have some liberal opinions. It doesn't mean we're a hypocrite. It just means we're a human being.
Yeah, yeah. So, in a world that feels that no matter which opinion you have, there are those who will rally around you and say, "Yes, absolutely right," and then others will look at you, like you're, a spawn of Satan, for having. So how do we get back to maybe that mindset of being able to understand? Yeah, we have differences, but it doesn't mean that we can't actually have have a conversation with each other, a dialogue with each other, spend time at the snack shop, just enjoying each other. Why is it that we feel like there's a wall? If you don't feel this way, whether it's if you don't feel the way I do about culture, about religion, about politics, then I want nothing to do with you. I don't even want to make eye contact. Is there a way that we can break through that?
Yeah.
And if you had an answer to that, I guess
I'd solve the world's problems. I think,
but is there a way we can navigate it and maybe help us to move forward?
Yeah, I think it's always thinking about, I always have some common ground with another person. There's always something that we have in common. And it is easy to either demonize someone or to simply just other them and to think, well, they're not like me, so it's not worthwhile. We're not, but we always have something in common with other people that we can relate to them about. In order to have a civil society, we've all just got to find that, and we've got to deal with it. And I think about my parents, who they were on the opposite ends of the political spectrum from the moment they were dating. It didn't come up later. It just didn't impact their relationship. They had more in common than just who they voted for. That wasn't the sum total of their identities. And I think if we think about it long enough, we would agree. We can think about in our families. We're not going to share the same opinion on everything with people in our families, whether it's what makes a good movie or what's the best church to go to or whatever. But what is that other common ground that we can talk about? If we can't have a friendly debate that doesn't get too emotional and accusatory, where is that common ground? Because how can I value that other person and meet them where they are? Because if you think about it, if someone has a really strong, vocal, emotional opinion about something, it's coming from somewhere. And maybe it's our job to figure out where it's coming from.
Oh, love that. Dr. Duffus, thanks for joining us right here
thank you.
Art of Public Speaking. I'll give you a chance to shout out for recruiting for any of your classes. I know you got... Yes. So anything you want to share about your classes, maybe someone interested that maybe wants to pursue English, or maybe just explore some of your other classes?
Well, with the rhetoric class, if you really want to take another public speaking class, which you don't have to, but there is rhetoric. It's English 270, and it's kind of, I guess it's more of the same, but it is focused looking back at the classical Greek and Roman stuff. We really hit that hard. And I think it's a fun class. Outside of that, yeah, we do have lots of different English classes that could be fun. I guess when I teach literature, I tend to teach world literature. So that's really anything except US literature and British literature. If you're interested in that, we've got a lot of creative writing classes. If you enjoy writing, we have fiction, poetry, nonfiction. So we do have some kind of, I don't know, crossover into similarities with comm studies. An English minor can be, or a double major can be a real nice pairing with comm studies. We've got lots of students that they minor in English and they're comm studies majors. So we're very compatible.
Awesome.
In that way.
Thanks again for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. I enjoyed it. Thanks.
So as we wrap up, I hope that this dialogue helps you to see that rhetoric is not something that's distant. It's not something that's abstract. It's really something that's present in so many of your daily interactions. It's about how you build trust, how you listen, and also how you engage with others. Ethos, pathos, and logos aren't tools that are reserved for debates or formal speeches. They show up when you're trying to explain an idea, when you're sharing a story, when you're standing up for something that you believe in, or if you're simply just trying to be understood. Something that's also equally as important, effective communication honestly begins with listening. Being aware of your audience and recognizing that every single exchange is an opportunity for you to connect. So as you continue to work your way through life, just like me, every single day I'm working my way through life, I encourage you to pay attention not only to what you say, but to why. Why are you saying it? And how your choices as a communicator can create clarity, how they can create connection, and how your choices and what you say and how you say it and why you say it can create meaning.